Joining me now in the studio is the lead sponsor of 3 bills that would help prevent gun violence in Minnesota, Senator Jeff Hayden. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the Taylor-Hayden Gun Violence Prevention Act, which was named for your sister, who was essentially in the wrong place at the wrong time last year. And our condolences to you and your family.
Well, thank you.
How would this bill help to prevent gun violence?
Well, one of the ways that we wanted to shape the bill, Taylor was unfortunately killed in a parking lot in Atlanta, Georgia on a girls' weekend out. And so some either gang violence or something went wrong between 2 parties and she got caught in the middle. We want to have a conversation with our community. We want to be able to have nonprofit and other organizations that really do outreach in communities, in particular in communities of color, where these kind of things happen more often than not, and start to have a conversation about the underlying culture of gun violence, making sure people understand what happens when you get a gun, when you shoot a gun, and ultimately what happens to the person who shoots the perpetrator and the victims and their families. And we think that that's a different approach to gun violence, to really start to have this conversation.
Your bill would seek an appropriation for programs. It would offer grants to programs that worked in the community, as you said. Can you give an example of a kind of program that would qualify? Well,
you know, what we would hope is develop an RFP, but one, I just spoke to a black psychologist today. She has a program called Project Mari. It's an Afrocentric program that really seeks to talk to young people about who they are, and make sure that they value themselves and that they're safe in their practices and what they do. And gun violence, along with other safe practices, that it would be groups like that that we would identify through an RFP process that has the relationship with the community really structured towards adolescents, you know, post-adolescence, folks, you know, people like that, as well as their parents, because often this culture of violence has been perpetuated over generations.
Let's move to another bill that you're sponsoring, which would enable law enforcement or family members to petition the court to prohibit people from possessing firearms if they pose a significant danger to themselves or others. Why is this bill necessary?
Well, if you think about it, if someone is posing a threat to themselves, say they're suicidal, or they have a mental illness and the voices in their head are telling them to do something to someone else, and a court has deemed that they have this issue, one of the things that we want to do is to be able to safely get their guns, right? Safely get them with a family member or in a safe place while they develop this treatment, go through whatever the process that they need to go through. And then if the court deems that everything is okay, they could get those back. But there is a lot of data that says that people have these thoughts, and to get a gun, that's one of the easiest ways to act on it. So it really is a common sense measure that says that someone has been deemed to be a threat to themselves or to someone else, that they don't have a gun in their hand. And there are a lot of stories where this has happened and that person has acted upon it because they had a gun, or there's stories in which people have said this is what they're going to do. Somehow law enforcement took their guns away initially just to make the place safe. They have come back to the law enforcement agency and they had no tools other than to give that person back their gun, and they went out and killed someone.
But this law wouldn't really prevent somebody from going on the black market. Let's say they went through this process, their guns were taken. If they really, I mean, it would be harder, but it doesn't completely stop that.
Yeah, well, that's like anything else. So what we're trying to do is to give more tools to mental health and other professionals in order for people to get the treatment that they need in order so that they don't harm them. If someone is, you know, bent on harming somebody, then yeah, I guess that we can say that just about anything if that's what they want to do. But we create laws. I don't care if it's helping people to stop smoking or if it is, you know, drinking and driving and others. If someone, we can create a law for a DUI, multiple DUIs, but if someone is, you know, bent on driving and drinking, then they'll find a way. So I typically don't let that stop us from developing good public policy.
Your third bill would require background checks for all gun transfers. Mm-hmm. Does this essentially close the gun show loophole?
That's exactly what it does. Right now, if you're a federally qualified licensed gun dealer, you have to get, the person who wants to buy a gun has to show you that they've had a background check, or you can run a background check on them. But there is a loophole that you could go to your local swap meet or your local flea market, you know, wherever, and you can buy a gun. We've actually seen where young people have been turned away from buying liquor, from buying cigarettes, from buying pornography, but could buy a gun. right? And those kind of things shouldn't happen, and we should be able to make sure that we know who we're selling guns to.
I've heard some people express concern that a bill like this would prevent father to son or heirloom guns or gifting guns. Would it do anything with that?
No, typically those things are what we really carve out: long guns, heirlooms. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to make sure that people who are, have bad intentions or a history of either, say, mental illness where they've harmed themselves or they've had a history of harming people, that they can't have easy access to guns.
So far, all of your co-authors on your bills are DFLers. Are you looking for some Republican support?
We'd be glad to have bipartisan support on these bills. Unfortunately, it looks like special interest, the gun lobby, the NRA, kind of cast a really strong shadow on a lot of these bills. We're really hoping with the Taylor Hayden bill that doesn't happen, but the others, that has been the fight, and I think that's a shame. If you go out and you poll, overwhelmingly Minnesotans and people in the country want these kinds of things to happen, but unfortunately special interest gets in the way, and they score the votes, and legislators, and I want to say this, I think that there are some real concerns that legislators have, but I also know that a lot of people have been affected from gun violence, so we're really hoping we could get past this kind of partisan gridlock and figure out what's the common sense thing to do to make sure that bad people don't get guns in their hands.
Senator Hayden, I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, I appreciate it.